guys, this is Miss Strickland, and I'm going to be explaining your polynomial summative assessment for this year. So in this summative assessment, just like we had the summative assessment for sequences, we're going to have 4 possible problems that you can choose from, and you're going to answer 2 of them, either using a video or a written explanation. The one difference this time around is that we are requiring you to complete number 1, and you have to do number 1, okay? So you don't have an option, you have to do number 1, and then you have a choice between 2, 3, or 4 to complete, to explain basically the key features, the graph, the standard form of the equation, and the intercept form of the equation. So essentially you're given one of those and then you have to come up with the other 3. So this video is going to explain kind of the premise of the assessment, and then it's also going to show you a sample video that you can do to record yourself for this assignment. Okay, so the rubric is pretty much the same as before, and you also have a vocabulary bank as well. I really encourage you guys to focus and work with these vocabulary words. They help us as teachers better understand how you are getting the concept, and also it helps clarify what you're really understanding. Okay, so as you can see, you're going to be filling out these 4 boxes for problem number 1. Problem number 1, the standard form of the equation is given, and so you have to fill out the other remaining 3. Couple of quick things in regards to intercept form. Notice that there are 4 parentheses here. You do not necessarily need all 4 of them. You may only need 3, or you may only need 2. So it just depends on the equation that you're given, or the graph that you're given, or the key features, and so forth. So please be aware and double check, making sure that your intercept form is correct. It does not have to be this long. Same with standard form, it does not also have to be this long. Another thing that you need to pay attention to as you're filling out these word prompts, you really want to try and explain different key features in each one. So if you were explaining end behavior when it comes to the graph, then for intercept form, explain a different key feature, and then in standard form, explain a different key feature than that. This way it shows your understanding completely for all of the different aspects of this polynomial assignment. Okay, so if you're interested in seeing an example, you can go ahead and at the very top, you can click here and you can view an example. I'm going to show you that in just a second. The other thing I wanted to mention is that you have a second choice that you have to fill out here as well. So don't forget to do both of them, because otherwise you're only going to get 50% credit if you only answer problem 1. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to that example now. So if we go ahead into the example, it's very similar to problem number 1 that you're required to do. And notice that I highlighted the key vocabulary words that I used in regards to filling out the boxes and also in my explanation. Now, you can either choose to do a 2-paragraph explanation like I did here, or you can choose to do a video. And so that's what I'm going to go ahead and do now, is I'm going to explain what I would be doing if I decided to do a video for this prompt, okay? So again, your video needs to be about 1 to 2 minutes, and you don't want to go less than 1 minute, and you don't want to go more than 2 minutes. So here we go. All right, so I chose this problem to complete, and I noticed that when I chose this problem, it was in standard form, so I was able to copy and paste the equation into our standard form equation box here. Immediately when I was looking at this equation, I noticed that the leading coefficient was -2. So that meant that the end behavior, or the right side of the graph, was going to go down to -infinity. And that would help me when I go into my graphing and when I'm looking at different key features. Another thing I noticed in standard form was that it had no constant, which means that the y-intercept is going to be 0, 0. And so I was able to kind of get an idea of a little bit of what the graph might look like with the end behavior and the y-intercept. From standard form, I went into intercept form. The reason why I went into intercept form is I thought that if I was able to factor this equation, I'd get a better idea of what the x-intercepts were and the zeros. So what I did to factor this, I immediately realized that there was a GCF, or greatest common factor, of -2x. So I factored out the -2x, and it left me with the trinomial x squared minus 2x minus 3. With this trinomial, I used the x method to help me set up my factor by grouping. So when I created my x, I had -3 and 1 that would multiply to give me -3, and -3 plus 1 to add to give me -2. And so then I was able to set up my factor by grouping inside my parentheses, and I was able to take out my GCF from my first two, which was x, and I was able to take out my GCF from my second two, which was 1. And then I was able to finalize my factoring by grouping to get -2x, parentheses, x minus 3, parentheses, and then parentheses, x plus 1. From intercept form, I was able to identify the zeros, or the roots of my graph, by setting each of those factored forms equal to 0 and solving for x. I could see that there was going to be a 0 at +3, 1, -1, 0, and 0, 0. So because I had my intercepts now, I was able to go ahead and plot those intercepts on my graph. And because I knew that the right side of the graph was going to go down to -infinity, I was able to move it down. And then I also noticed that each one of these had a single root. So that meant it went just straight through each of the x-intercept points. To confirm and make sure that my graph was done correctly, I used Desmos, and what I did was I inputted the standard form of the equation and the intercept form to make sure that I factored it correctly. So as you can see on my graph, if I take off my factored form, the red graph exists, which is my standard form, and then my blue form is going to be my factored form. So they align right on top of each other. So I was able to determine that my graph was correct for my polynomial example. The last thing that I did was I went into my key features. A lot of the key features I was able to already find from standard form and intercept form, but I was also able to confirm them with the graph. For instance, on the end behavior, as x went to infinity, f of x went to -infinity, so the right side of the graph went down. As x went to -infinity, f of x went to +infinity, so the left side of the graph went up. I already had noticed that my leading coefficient was -2 and that this was going to be an odd degree, and I could tell that because one arm was going up and one arm was going down on the graph, and then also my highest degree was 3 in my standard form equation. I was able to identify the x-intercepts from my intercept form and the y-intercept from my standard form. So using all of this information, I was able to clearly identify different key features and help determine what my graph and intercept form would look like. Okay, so that would be the end of your 1 to 2 minute explanation if you choose to do a video explanation for this project. Now remember that you're going to need to do 1 to 2 minutes for each one, okay? So each example that you choose to do would need to be 1 to 2 minutes. So that kind of wraps up our summative video. I'm hoping that this helps explain what you need to do for this polynomial summative assessment. If you have any questions, feel free to remember to reach out to your teachers and they can continue to help and support you.